Why is discipline so easy to understand and so difficult to actually do? You already know what discipline looks like. Wake up earlier, focus on the important work, stop wasting time on things that move your life nowhere. None of this is mysterious. Most people understand discipline perfectly in theory. Yet something strange happens the moment action is required. You know exactly what you should do, the next step is clear, but instead of starting it, you delay it. You check something first, maybe rearrange something small, and tell yourself you'll begin in a few minutes. Not because you're lazy. In fact, most people who struggle with discipline are not lazy at all. They are simply missing the structure that makes discipline possible. And without that structure, discipline slowly collapses. Why is it that knowing the right thing to do almost never guarantees that we actually do it? In this video, you will discover 4 laws of discipline hidden inside the philosophy of the legendary samurai strategist Miyamoto Musashi. Principles that transform discipline from a constant battle with yourself into something far more stable and reliable. Because discipline does not appear through pressure, it appears through structure. When certain laws are present, discipline becomes natural. When those laws are missing, even strong motivation slowly collapses. To see how these laws work in real life, imagine someone named Daniel. For years, Daniel believed he simply lacked discipline. He tried routines, productivity systems, and fresh starts every Monday, but every attempt followed the same pattern: strong motivation at the beginning, slow erosion later. What Daniel didn't realize was that discipline rarely fails because people are weak. It fails because they never learn the structure that makes discipline possible. And once Daniel understood these laws, he realized his problem had never been discipline itself. The first law begins in a place most people never examine. Not motivation, but direction. Chapter 1. The first law. Direction removes resistance. Daniel noticed the same strange pattern every day. He would sit down at his desk knowing exactly what he needed to do. The task was clear, the next step obvious, and logically there was no reason to delay. And yet, he didn't begin immediately. Instead, his attention drifted. A message, a quick check of something online, a small task that suddenly felt urgent. None of these things were important, but they created just enough movement to postpone the real beginning, and each delay left behind the same quiet frustration. For a long time, Daniel believed this meant he lacked discipline, but the real problem was something he had never named. One evening, while reading about the philosophy of Musashi, he discovered an idea that shifted something in his thinking. Musashi warned warriors about holding 2 directions in the mind at the same time, because when intention is divided, action becomes weak and uncertain. Daniel suddenly recognized what had been happening. His mind never held a single direction. Part of him wanted progress and focus, another part wanted comfort, distraction, and the relief of postponing effort. Every time he sat down to work, those 2 directions quietly negotiated, and discipline cannot survive negotiation. Musashi trained in a world where hesitation could cost a life, which is why his principle was simple: remove the second direction. When the path is clear, the mind stops debating. And when the mind stops debating, the body begins to move. So Daniel tried something small. Instead of asking himself whether he felt ready to begin, he removed the decision. Sit down. Start. No internal discussion. At first it felt strange, almost mechanical, but it also felt lighter. Because the first law of discipline is simple. Discipline begins the moment the mind stops arguing with itself. But clarity alone cannot sustain discipline, because even a clear direction can collapse if the structure around it is unstable. And this is where most people lose discipline, even after they have already started. Chapter 2. The second law. Discipline is built through repetition. Modern culture admires intensity, the overnight transformation, the sudden surge of motivation, the dramatic change of habits. But Musashi approached mastery very differently. He believed the strongest discipline is built through repetition, the same movement practiced again and again until hesitation disappears. Not because repetition is exciting, but because repetition removes uncertainty. And uncertainty is where discipline quietly dies. Daniel realized that most of his previous attempts had failed for the same reason, and it was the mistake almost everyone makes. He tried to change everything at once. New routines, new schedules, new expectations. For a few days, the system worked, but eventually it became too heavy to maintain. So this time, he chose something smaller. Instead of transforming his entire life, he created a single rule. Every morning before checking his phone or opening messages, he would spend 30 minutes working on the most important task of the day. 30 minutes of uninterrupted focus. Nothing dramatic, just consistency. At first, it required effort, but after a few weeks, something almost invisible began to change. Starting felt easier. The beginning had become familiar. And this is the quiet power of repetition. Each repetition reduces the energy required to begin again. What once required discipline slowly becomes a pattern. But repetition introduces a hidden danger, because the moment discipline begins to work, people begin to relax. And strangely, this is where many disciplined people begin to fail. Chapter 3: The Third Law. Discipline must survive success. For the first time in years, Daniel felt that his days were under control. His mornings were structured, his focus improved. Tasks that once felt overwhelming now moved forward steadily. And with this progress came something subtle: relaxation. For a while, the system worked perfectly, and that success slowly made Daniel more confident. And confidence has a strange effect on discipline. One morning, he skipped the routine, telling himself it didn't matter. After all, he had already proven he could maintain discipline. Nothing dramatic happened that day. But Daniel noticed something uncomfortable. The old resistance was quietly returning. The next morning, starting felt heavier. Musashi warned about this phenomenon in his teachings. He believed that the moment a warrior believes he has mastered the path, he has already begun to lose it. Because discipline is not something you achieve once, it is something you maintain. Daniel realized something important. Discipline is not tested on difficult days. It is tested on comfortable ones. On days when progress is visible and the mind begins to whisper that the rules are no longer necessary. So he returned to the structure, not out of fear, but out of understanding. Structure protects clarity. Without it, progress slowly dissolves. Yet even strong discipline can still collapse under one final pressure. Not exhaustion, not comfort, but emotion. And that final pressure is where the last law appears. Chapter 4: The Fourth Law. Discipline requires emotional stillness. But comfort was not the only thing that disrupted Daniel's discipline. Eventually, Daniel noticed a pattern he had never seen before. Whenever his emotional state shifted, his discipline shifted with it. A stressful day weakened his focus. A frustrating conversation could derail an entire afternoon. Even small waves of irritation quietly dismantled routines he had carefully built. In other words, his discipline depended on how he felt. And this is where most discipline quietly collapses. But Musashi trained warriors for situations where emotions could not be trusted. Fear, anger, excitement, and frustration all distort judgment. A warrior who reacts directly to these emotions becomes unpredictable, not to the enemy, but to himself, which is why Musashi emphasized something deeper than discipline: inner stillness. The ability to act according to principle regardless of emotional turbulence. Daniel began experimenting with a small change. Whenever he felt the impulse to abandon a routine, he paused. just long enough to notice the emotion without immediately obeying it. What surprised him was how quickly many impulses faded once they were observed. The frustration passed, the resistance softened, and the structure remained. Because the strongest discipline is not rigid, it is calm. It does not fight emotion, it simply refuses to let emotion rewrite the structure of the day. And this reveals something Musashi understood centuries ago. Discipline is not strength directed outward, it is stability maintained within. Musashi never described discipline as force. He described it as alignment, a quiet agreement between your mind, your actions, and the direction of your life. And when that alignment appears, discipline stops feeling like effort and begins to feel inevitable.